So, hi Jane, and first off, congratulations on I Saw the TV Glow, a really powerful and visually overwhelming experience. So, after finishing your last movie while going to the World's Fair, when did you start developing this rather unique and personal concept? How did you get in touch with A24?
Um, my process tends to be one where an idea will lodge in my brain for years, usually about 2 years, before I understand how to turn it into a story or a film. In this case, it was the idea of a TV show that was sort of unceremoniously canceled and ended on a cliffhanger that sort of torments people as they get older and never get this resolution that they're desperate for. Um, and I think I understood, even while I was making World's Fair, I think I knew that this was going to be my next film, and that the film would be speaking, just like World's Fair does, about a queer trans experience, using this like metaphor of the canceled TV show and the way that it makes these kids feel like their reality isn't quite right. I had written the script. I think I wrote the script in November of 2020, right before World's Fair premiered at Sundance, and I knew that the best case scenario for a filmmaker like myself, who had made one really small film that had been much more than a calling card, but sort of my attempt to say, like, here's who I am as an artist. Here are the kinds of pieces that I want to make. That the best case scenario for any young artist in America, where there really aren't a lot of opportunities to make sort of left of center or subversive work, that working with A24 would be the dream. It was incredibly lucky that they responded to my first film and liked the script for the new one, and gave me the kinds of resources to make a film that I never thought I would get to have. Yeah, it was an incredible experience.
That's awesome. And as you already mentioned, the movie centered around a fictional 90s TV show, The Pink Opaque. Was there any TV shows that you were obsessed over when you were younger? Were there any specific shows that the film was inspired by?
Yeah, the show within the film, The Pink Opaque, is sort of a play on this genre that I think still exists today, but was very dominant in the 90s, is the sort of like teen girls fight monsters and save the world type of TV show. If there was one TV show that inspired it in the film, it would be the American show Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which was like a Bible to me as a kid. I was obsessed with that show, and and when you're young and you love a TV show very deeply, it can really become much more than just like a thing that you watch every week. It can kind of become a way of understanding yourself. So above all, Buffy, but the show is also pulling from a lot of other like kind of like budget early 90s latex monster Canadian co-production sort of kids shows like Goosebumps, or Are You Afraid of the Dark, or The Adventures of Pete and Pete, or The Secret World of Alex Mack. These shows that have, I can't imagine they've stood the test of time, but in the early 90s, if you were a kid looking for something to invest in emotionally, were quite important, I think.
The film has an eerie, surreal, almost lynching quality to it. Why do you think is it that horror is such a great tool to process trauma and like question societal expectations?
I think I've always loved like genre as metaphor. Perhaps metaphor isn't exactly the right words, but in trying to articulate something personal, and in trying to articulate experiences that like I don't necessarily have language for, or if I do, it would be kind of didactic or just not interesting creatively to sort of sit down and try to just tell you about these strange, uncanny feelings, these queer feelings that growing up in a society that I felt quite alienated from. I don't think I have a better language to speak about this. And so I turned to genre. I turned to this sort of stories and worlds and tropes and ideas that had obsessed me as a kid. And when I look back at those shows, a lot of them, I see exactly this. I see them using genre to explore personal themes or stories of otherness or queerness. And I think I work in this tradition. I think for me, it's always like, how can I make something that expresses something deeply personal, but does it in a way that is very non-straightforward or is using like the language of cinema or the language of genre to illuminate experiences that we haven't really seen on screen before.
And there's also like a great musicality to the movie with famous indie artists such as Phoebe Bridgers or Caroline Polachek appearing either in front of the camera or being part of the soundtrack. How did these artists get involved with the project, and what is the reason behind this rather musical layer?
I think as a teenager, music was as, if not more important to me than television. I really clung to music as a source of identity and clung to music, especially like sad songs that expressed some kind of angst or teen feelings that I wasn't really seeing anywhere else. And as a kid, the experience of that Owen has in the film of sort of like finding the cool older person who's almost like a queer mentor, and I had this in high school as well. I had older friends who sort of took me to punk shows and showed me all of the music that no one else in my high school was listening to, and it was really like a source of a lot of like a balm for me. And so I kind of always knew that it was going to be a teen angst movie, and a teen angst movie needs a great teen angst soundtrack, like just harkening back to the films of John Hughes or Greg Araki, or even a film like Donnie Darko, where you remember the music in the movie as much as you remember the movie itself. I pitched A24 on making an original soundtrack for the film in addition to the score that exists in the film. And I sort of said to them, I want to create the soundtrack that would have existed for the Pink Opaque, for the fake TV show, because the 90s was such a rich time for sort of music and movies. And they really just let me run wild with it. They let me put together essentially a mixtape of 16 original songs that I commissioned from mostly queer artists who I really loved, and sort of worked with each one of them individually, made them playlists, talked to them about inspiration points for what I thought their song would be, but really said to all of them, write the song that you would have played if you got to play on a TV show in the 90s.
And another famous musician, none other than Limp Bizkit's very own Fred Durst, appears in the movie in a surprisingly large role, or let's say important role, as Chesty Smith's father. How did this casting choice come about? Was it like a play on this twisted crave for 90s nostalgia movie plays on?
I think once I had the idea of casting Fred Durst in that role, I was obsessed with it, and essentially begged A24 to let me do it. I try to work from like a dreamy place in terms of all of the decisions of what you're putting on screen. It's not necessarily like like a narrative logic. It's more of like an emotional logic. And I think in this case, I knew that when you see this father figure in the film who's angry, and we see mostly in wide shots sort of glaring at us from across the room, I knew I wanted a particular kind of menace. I wanted the viewer to feel disquieted by whatever face we're looking at. And, I really asked myself if I was going to cast an angry dad in my own dream, who would it be? And Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit, just came to me, and I said it has to be him.
That's really cool. I think we're supposed to finish, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for taking time to talk to us, and we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Of course.